Peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it, we have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the Pomeroon, not one sherriga.
Welcome to another edition of Voice of the Diaspora. Tonight, we are addressing Vice President Jagdeo's racist and degrading comment leveled at Guyanese politician Cathy Hughes. In studio with me this evening is Member of Parliament and Chairman of the Alliance for Change, Mrs. Cathy Hughes, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, social activist, and J.R. Crawford, co-host of Voice of the Diaspora. I want to welcome my guests this evening. So many people are tuning in at the moment, and we will go straight into the program. Welcome, Ms. Cathy Hughes, Member of Parliament and Chairman of the AFC. Welcome, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, social activist, and welcome, J.R. Crawford, co-host of Voice of the Diaspora. Of course, it is your first time here, MP Cathy Hughes, and we will give you the opportunity to make a brief introduction, to give us a brief introduction of yourself, and we go straight into the program. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Norman, and it is wonderful to be here, and you're absolutely correct. This is the first time I've had the pleasure of joining your program. And I want to say hi to Apostle and, of course, JR Mr. Crawford. It's good to be discussing this issue with all of you. I hope you had a good day today. And you asked me to start off telling you a bit about myself. Well, born and I only mention that because people sometimes ask me if I grew up in Guyana. I absolutely did. Product of St. Agnes, St. Rose's. Only left Guyana when my family left for a couple of years. Went to University of the West Indies where I did media and television production. Came back to Ghana after being gone for about 15 years. Got married, thankfully, still married, 30 years this year. And of course, in 2005, I got involved with the Alliance for Change. I think really when I look at myself, I've always been since high school very involved in things happening in Guyana. My university degree was also in social studies and political science. And so I always had that interest. I think I get it from my dad, who was very involved with the UN, my grandfather, who was an advisor to Forbes Burnham many, many years ago. And so I've always been interested in Ghana and where we're headed. And as a young person, I thought, we've got so much potential. I didn't intend to get into politics. When the Alliance for Change was being formed, I was very excited at the possibility of a third force and a different kind of political landscape in Guyana. And so I've had no regrets doing that. Prior to that, I was very instrumental in a group called Guyana is First, and also a NGO that I formed called Women Against Violence Everywhere. And that one was in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we had a lot of, violence against young men, a very difficult time in our history. And that's me in a nutshell, Norman.
Thank you so much, MP Cathy Hughes. And I will give Apostle Nigel London for the sake of the new viewers, for him to give a brief introduction of himself.
Greetings to you.
He's
Thank
no
you very much.
stranger to the program.
Indeed, I'm not. I must say that I'm honored to have this opportunity to share the platform with you all again, including Mrs. Hughes, JR, and to the viewers, I say hello. My handle is Eliakim and not London because I vowed that I refused to bear the name. When I found the history of my forefather, he was sold at Rosignol. And even to say those words in 2023 makes me very upset to know that someone was sold and purchased by someone named London. So I did not leave and be called London, which is why I have the name Eliakim, which means God has raised up. And for whatever purpose I've been raised, I vow to live and die by that.
Thank you very much, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, their social activist. J.R. Crawford, a brief introduction.
Good night, everyone. Good night, my fellow guests, and to you, Norman. Not much to say. I mean, after 4 years and a couple of appearances on television, normally, I think the guests know me by now and what I stand for.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, JR. So we are going to get into the program, and this, of course, we started on a light note, and it's great to start on a light note, but this is a very, very serious program, a very, very serious issue we're dealing with here. And I want to say welcome to all of my viewers. I can't leave you out. I know you're interacting here. You're saying good night and good evening to Mistress Hughes and to all the guests here and the host also. And so I'm so happy so many people have already tuned in from the US and all over. We will go straight into the discourse after this.
Or a border. And from someone, a low life like Cathy Hughes, is Eve Moore or a border. And from someone, a low life like Cathy Hughes, is Eve Moore or a border.
Member of Parliament Cathy Hughes, who is also, you are also the chairman of the Alliance for Change. How did you feel? What was your first reaction? And the ensuing impacts, psychological and otherwise, when you would have heard that public statement made by the Vice President of Guyana?
Norman, I have to admit and say that I really was not surprised. when I heard the statement, I just thought, here he goes again, because it's not the first time that the vice president has attacked me. In the past, I've been called a criminal. I've been called a rigger. I'm one of the folks that rigged the last 2020 election, which is amazing. It certainly gave me a lot of power, because for someone that never was even in a polling station, does not work with GCOM, had nothing to do with the elections other than, going and casting my vote and being part of a political party and a previous government. I certainly had no role to play in that. So I must admit that I am very used to the abuse, unfortunately. And even within the parliament, I've said this a couple of times, but I know that many people do not understand the extent to which verbal abuse takes place in the parliament. And unfortunately, I am one of the recipients of that. What I will say is that, of course, it is hurtful. For me, it is just unnecessary, because I think of all the more important things that we could be doing. I've been in Parliament since 2011, and when I agreed to go into Parliament, I certainly had very high expectations that I would be making a contribution to the discourse of where Guyana is going, dealing with the problems that we have. And I really saw Parliament as an important mechanism that could start to, ensure that we create a better Guyana. And unfortunately, after being in the 10th Parliament in 2011, and now, of course, in 2012, and in 2015, and now in this Parliament, I'm pained. It hurts me, the extent to which Parliament is not functioning the way it was intended to. And so the abuse by the vice president is an approach that most of his colleagues, especially the male colleagues in his political party, seem absolutely comfortable with, and seem to think that that's the way that you treat women. And here there's a long list of persons associated with the PPP who have had nothing but derogatory statements to make about women. So I should have been absolutely surprised, horrified. I wasn't. It was to be expected.
It was to be expected. What action or actions do you intend to take? You know, coming out of this sort of racist and derogatory, degrading comment leveled by the vice president against you at an official, in his official capacity as vice president, which reflects the government. And of course, when we will begin to discuss together, um, you know, we will express our views. But I want to give you the opportunity to really speak first before we have that sort of discussion among us.
Well, as I said, this is how I've been the subject of these kinds of negative and totally unacceptable comments, very degrading comments. In the past, I have not. I've, verbally expressed my dissatisfaction. I have to let you know that about two sittings of Parliament ago, that was one of the few occasions that I've sent notes to the Speaker and WhatsApp messages privately. But about two sessions ago, I actually stood in the Parliament, and of course, it would be recorded in the Hansard, and indicated that I was not prepared to accept the verbal abuse. I have been extremely fortunate that I have always been surrounded by men that have done nothing but encourage me, build me up. It's the norm in my family from my father, grandfather, brothers, and of course, my husband. Most importantly, who is a excellent person for encouraging and being patient and understanding. And so, I'm not used to it. When you ask what I'm going to do, it's interesting that we're discussing this today when women across the world start their days of activism with regard to the whole issue of domestic violence. And I think everybody in Guyana can would agree that we have totally failed as a nation in our ability to protect women. And here we're talking from the worst and extremes of violence. There is not a week that goes by now in Guyana that we don't hear of some kind of spousal abuse, a partner that gets angry because a woman decided that she was leaving and ends up with, being stabbed in the back, stabbed in the stomach, where, there's just a long, long list. So this is a critical issue. And this is where the government and the representatives of the government, all men in Guyana must be held accountable for a behavior that's not acceptable. So I would not have gone to the courts for any kind of legal recourse previously, but I do intend to go to the courts to get redress. And and it's not an easy decision to make. The easy decision is to let it roll by and do nothing, because as you will see starting this evening, the verbal abuse, that the negative that comes out on social media, when you make a decision like this, you're stripped of everything. And to think that to decide to serve your country, the modus operandi say that you must be the butt of this, that you must have to face this as part of some kind of initiation ceremony that goes on and on and on, is really unacceptable. Um, you women are not allowed to step forward and serve. And I decided that I will take this as far as I can, just because I have been extremely blessed, as I said, with the way I've been brought up, the opportunities I've been given, the support from my family and close friends. And I think that I have to speak up, as I've always done, for women that are not as fortunate as I have been. And therefore, I do hope, and I know we're going to talk about it, I do want to really look at what is missing still, especially in our legislative agenda, in our parliamentary system, the commissions that aren't in place, the Human Rights Commission. And I want to tie what has taken place into all those actions that I certainly, with my colleagues and hundreds of thousands of families, could take. So that's where I'm at.
Member of Parliament and chairperson of the Alliance for Change here on Voice of the Diaspora. I want to take a moment to invite Apostle Nigel Eliakim to give a brief response to what MP Cathy Hughes would have said. Uh, Apostle, when you heard Mr. Jagdeo's comment, and it's trending all over the world at the moment, and people are outraged, very, very outraged. When you heard that comment, and you're sitting here with a distinguished woman, Guyanese leader, you know, someone that is respectable, someone that is accomplished, and someone who has and continues to serve Guyana. What What do you have to say?
Well, let me first of all say deliberately that I do not refer to Vod Jagdeo as the vice president. There's no such post in Guyana. He's the second, probably, and there has to be some other office or portfolio that he holds. Mark Phillips happens to be the first vice president of Guyana. Vod Jagdeo, we don't have the US's constitutional framework where we have a president and a vice president. Vod Jagdeo is nothing but Vod Jagdeo, who serves probably as Minister of Finance because Ashleen Singh has got a portfolio that I've never heard of. But I don't call Vod Jagdeo any vice president. He doesn't deserve the grief that to suit him. When Vod Jagdeo said what he said, listening to Mrs. Hughes, I am not as controlled as she is in expressing my outrage because Vod Jagdeo is a disrespectful idiot. Bottom line, the fact that he can speak of a woman in that manner, and please take note that I'm yet to see the women of the PPP Civic speaking about what he said. It speaks volumes to what he surrounds himself with. Now, if he can speak to Mrs. Hughes in this way, at a press conference, it is viral, and not one soul from the PPP can address this man publicly or demand that he apologizes, or further to that, say that they will resign as females because if he can treat another woman like that, how would they be treated? There's quite a bit about what the PPP, the females therein, are prepared to accept in order to retain some position of benefit. But I must say that it is true that a woman has to be surrounded by men of great caliber and class for her, in Miss Hughes' case, to not be, Mrs. Hughes, to not be livid enough, and it sounds strange coming from me, a preacher, to physically deal with Vod Jagdeo sometimes, because I think that's what he may require in some instances, to be dealt with in a manner that teaches him how to respect people, especially females. I'm not one as a man, and it could be this is where Mrs. Hughes and I differ. I'm not as a man who would sit around and be cautious or in dealing with men who would say what he would have said about Madam Hughes. And I said this before, when Darmlal told Lewis that she wanted to do, I said, if I were in Parliament, I would hit him so hard he will never do it again. I promise you that. Because there's certain things I do not tolerate. This is not being a preacher here. There's certain things I will never tolerate as a man. And so to MP Cathy, I'm grateful that you've chosen to take the route less violent, to head to the court of law. And the only unfortunate reality for me is that I'm not sure before whom this matter would be heard and to what extent this idiot has got an impact, even in our judicial circle, to not have you see justice.
Well, let me quickly ask you, brother Eliakim. We know that action will be taken. We know that MP Cathy Hughes will be going to the courts and perhaps reaching out or presenting or case to an international relevant organization that deals with the abuse of women and so on, and constitutional frameworks that deal with internationally how women are treated in terms of violence and so on. I want to ask you a question. Do you think that looking at the history, MP Cathy, you said, and she admitted herself that she confessed herself that these abuses were going on for a long time in the National Assembly, the place that is supposed to decide the rights of the women out there, the thousands of Guyanese women out there that are suffering, that are trampled on, those that have died at the hand of violent men, and there has been no justice. to date. Some of the cases have not even reached the courts. Well, and I don't want to get emotional this early, but this is the National Assembly, and I have to say that the opposition conducts themselves, from my observation as an activist, and I call out the opposition, when I see the error. A lot of our own opposition personalities don't they're not happy with me, but I do that. But in most cases, you see the opposition MPs and so on conducting themselves in a way that is becoming. But the question is, the unbecoming behavior coming from the side of the government that is leveled at women in the National Assembly. And MP Cathy Hughes said it has happened so many times. Apostle, do you think that do you think it is satisfactory to don't just go to the courts, reach out to the international community? Do you think that there is other stringent action required at this juncture to bring about the change?
Thank you. And there should be very stringent action required. And this has nothing to do, in my view, as to whether the members of the opposition conduct themselves in a manner that is wholesome or whether they mirror that of the PPP. This is about a man who attacked again another man's. This in the north. Cathy Hughes. She's not Cathy Miss. This is somebody's wife. So this is beyond the National Assembly here. If we take it to say that she is a member of parliament, she's one of a societal repute, and hence we should be cautious as to how Jagdeo speaks to her, it limits what the other females who may not be members of parliament,
Thank you.
a
Yeah.
beggar at the side of the
Yes,
street,
yes.
deserve no less respect than Mrs. Hughes. This is not about a member of parliament here. This is about Jagdeo, who, again, I say, is an idiot, who doesn't know how to treat people, females especially. That's what I'm saying to you, that if, for example, this man would have done this to a woman selling at border market, would it be less impactful? Would this be less treacherous? Would there be less focus being on it? And this is not to belittle or to diminish Mrs. Hughes' societal
No,
position.
you're
It's
right.
to establish a critical point here. She is a woman, not a member of parliament here. There's a female who's somebody's wife that borrowed Jagdeo, who has no wife and couldn't keep one. And for obvious reasons, now, if you can say this about Mrs. Hughes, MPU, what will you tell Varshney? This has me, and that's why I did not go to do a live broadcast up until now. You've invited me here, which is why I'm here.
Yes.
But many times I have to take a few days to calm myself
To
down, so people not
process.
see the worst side of me.
Yeah.
I don't play when it comes to disrespecting females. That right there. I have sons in ministry. I have sons. I see them as my biological sons who will tell you this. I will deal with them in a manner you've never ever dreamt about. If they disrespect their wives, I don't play with that. This is not about member parliament here. This is about a man who does not respect a female. And so there should be, in my view, men in society who would deal with Jagdeo, because he's crossed yet again another line. And let's not forget, when O.C. Rogers slapped the woman, Jagdeo couldn't talk. When Barry Ramsoup said the one need to be stripped and slapped, you remember the word slap again?
Yep.
Barrett couldn't talk. And it's obvious why he can't speak, because they have got an example in him. And so there should be measures taken that I believe would cause Jagdeo to never even consider doing this again. And I know the measure to be taken, by the way. He would never do it again. I promise you that.
Well, we'll come back to that. Thank you so much, Apostle Nigel Eliakim. J.R. Crawford, quickly, I didn't mean quickly or to hurry you up or anything, but I was just saying, what do you think about the situation?
Norman, in the of African recognition and also Mrs. Hughes as a female and a person who have done so much for the country and for women. It is very, very disturbing to see a former president berate someone unnecessarily in that manner. And what's more disturbing is a lack of action from other women's group in Guyana, and more so the international ambassadors. Remember, they are all females, the main ones, and not seeing them come out and make a statement in today's world of the abuse that should not be meted out to our females. It's very, very disheartening. And I know Miss Hughes may be feeling all alone because she have had some good relationship with some very important females from international bodies. And you're not seeing anybody come out there and, put a stop to the PPP in, abusing our representative. And in Miss Hughes' case, when she was called or labeled that derogatory term, not only was Miss Hughes being disrespected, but African people in general, and also her whole constituency that she represents in Parliament. We are trying to improve our country's morals and our standing in the international community. And here we are having elected officials blatantly disrespecting people who are there to represent the people's interests. And the hurtful thing, we just had a fact-finding mission leave this shores, not maybe 72 hours, where there are numerous complaints about disrespect and discrimination by the current administration against people of African descent. And here it is, a former two-time president goes right out there and disrespect one of the very same people who were in a discussion and trying to improve our moral standing in society and have our country be in a better standing. So we are seeing a total disrespect from the current administration,
Yep.
and it's showing us that Guyana's moral standing is in the dumps. And the people who support this current administration, they should be ashamed of themselves. I can't recall, and if I'm wrong, anyone could correct me, where former President Granger was disrespectful to females or Indo-Guyanese women during his presidency. There is no need for us to be this way as elected officials. Every time a public person opens their mouth, they should bring something out of unity and of growth for this country so we can go forward as a nation, because we are not speaking for ourselves. When we become public people, we speak for our followers, our supporters, and we're also supposed to look out for the opposition. We are not politicians for one set of people. We are politicians for all Guyanese. And what Barry Jagdeo did there is totally wrong, very disrespectful, and whatever action comes to him, he will have to deal with it. And I do hope the international bodies do act on it. And also we need to see a very, very vibrant response from the opposition team. Annette Ferguson, Natasha Singh Lewis, Dorita Fernandez, and others. They have gone through so much, Curtin McDonald, in Parliament. We are not supposed to see the highest office in the land where our representatives are being discriminated because of their sex or because of their ethnicity. These things must stop, or eventually, like Mr. Landon said earlier, there will be retribution and people are not going to like it. Somebody is not going to take it easy if it's their wife, their mother, their sister, or their daughter.
Thank you so much, co-host of Voice of the Diaspora, Jack Crawford. There, I just want
Norman.
to. I just want to quickly. I'm bringing you in now, Mrs. Hughes. I just want to quickly say that Gita Chandan Edmond, attorney at law and former magistrate, was supposed to be on this program this evening, but she had an emergency at the last minute, so she's expected to be on Thursday. I spoke with a professor from a university abroad that is associated with Red Thread and women's organizations and so on. And I wanted to have one of the representatives of Red Thread on the last program, not this one. And the professor from the university abroad said that they reach out. I'm not going to talk about gender or anything here. They reached out to Red Thread, and Red Thread say they wouldn't come on these programs. They wouldn't come on but they were going to do a letter to Stabrook News and perhaps Skytrol News and so on, and that's basically it. And so I wanted to make that point. Miss MP Cathy Hughes, chairman of AFC, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments and, really to thank Mr. Crawford and also Apostle Eliakim on the comments. That this is a broader problem because it really highlights two important things. It highlights the level of fear that our society is functioning under, where people that know what is right and what is wrong don't feel that it is safe for them to stand up and to speak out. And so what we've been doing is gradually diminishing the levels of accountability, the role models that we should be projecting for the next generation, that's built on principles of integrity, honesty, humility. Those are all in current in this time in Guyana, values that we seem not to find important. And the more and more organizations and people that don't start to say we will not accept this as the normal way of life in Guyana, we just keep eroding and going further and further down into the dregs of society, so to speak. The problem we also have is that we, Guyana, and this is so ironic, 15 years ago, you'd go to a women's conference in Barbados, as I have done, and you would be applauded. Guyana was applauded that we had more than one-third female representation in our parliament. As you will know, in several parliaments across the world, it's so rare to have so many women being represented. And therefore, we are actually being dishonest when we're able to bring our women into the parliament just so that you have women's participation in politics, which is very important. You need a female voice at the table of decision making. We encourage women to get involved in their churches, in their community organizations, in the NGOs, because all of that helps to make a more productive and fairer society. And yet, these things are happening in the parliament and generally in our society, and we seem to turn a blind eye. We forgot the comments that this current AG made in a recording about a female reporter where, he was suggesting that he was going to act as a pimp for his family member. I mean, all these things have been happening. I know Apostle mentioned some of the other individuals within that scope and that area of the PPP who choose not to reflect the morals of their religion they profess to be part of, and those that do not have a religious component to their existence, I mean, we see and we know and we know what we get. Tabitha Sarabo, Haley, my colleague in the parliament, made a report that she was assaulted by a member by Mr. Kwame McCoy, and there was a big song and dance. There was one witness, and that witness was not allowed to speak up because that witness was viewed as being coming from the same political party, the same side of the opposition side of the parliament. So that witness's statement was not given the worth and recognition it would have been given in a court of law. So we just brushed it aside. And again, unfortunately, we are so fractured as a country, as a people, and this is reflected in the parliament. You cannot even get female MPs across the aisle to stand up and say, no, we will not have that. And the
Right.
worst indication of how low we are was when Nigel Darmlal could stand in the parliament at the podium to be recorded in the Hansards and say the most derogatory statement he made. And he literally, that if you look at the footage, the session continued, the speaker continued for another 13 or 15 minutes as though nothing had happened.
Right.
You tell a woman that she needs a dildo, and the conversation continues as though, oh, it's nothing. And the worst part of that is that members of parliament were sanctioned for up to 7 months after. Members of the opposition side were sanctioned, could not attend parliament, um, could not represent the people they're supposed to represent, had their stipend, which I don't even know if that is legal, had their stipend, the little measly contribution you get. You had that cut. And Mr. Darmlal did not even go to the Privileges Committee. He did not even have to stand and explain himself. He came back after the speaker took a break. He came back and gave an apology that was not an apology. If anybody happened to be offended by what I said, then I would offer an apology. That's not an apology. So we have a major problem because the value system that we operate under in Guyana is one that says that you can treat a woman any way you want, anyhow you want. And we have the agents of the state because Mr. Jagdeo was representing the government of Guyana at that press conference. And therefore, that is unacceptable.
Right.
And he has done this to several people. Several. This is the norm. This is the normal behavior. I know he gets angry when I mention it, but he also did it to his wife. And we all know that because it's been in the public domain. No value for a woman, no respect, that we should be treated in a certain way. And definitely, we should be allowed to contribute without the abuse. So, how do we begin to encourage more women to come on board? I know the AFC is delivering to the Women and Gender Commission and also to the Ethnic Relations Commission
Yeah.
requests and correspondence asking that they act and they interrogate this, what transpired. But a couple of months ago, about 4 months ago, I sat with the Women and Gender Commission, and we were discussing a very important issue. How do we get more women to participate in politics in Guyana? Because I do believe that women have the ability to transcend a lot of the divisions that men sometimes find it a little more difficult and tend to hold on to. Women, because we are mothers, and have children have an ability, an excellent ability to be able to bring things down, talk to each other, work together, because we got to make sure that those kids and those children and the next generation are the kinds of young people that are level headed, that are rounded, that have the right values and can be important contributors to the development of this country. So these are all the different issues. It's a farce for us to be celebrating. We got, one third and lots of women in the parliament, and that's how they're treated. And Professor Apostle Eliakim is absolutely correct. Here we're talking, as I said before, there's no distinction with me and the lady that's in the market. Whichever way it doesn't go, it shouldn't go. And the message that you're sending is what is problematic. Because you're actually saying to the partner or the spouse or whoever it is of that woman in the market, the woman that is a single parent, that this is the norm, this is acceptable behavior. Man, if the vice president, if the whoever doing it is all right, man, what y'all digging up? That's the society. She come home and Shane cook the food. Yeah, well,
I want to ask you this because you said that Bar Jagdeo did the same thing to his wife, or even worse, basically. You didn't say that, but I'm just alluding to the fact that you mentioned Bar Jagdeo's wife, who is an Indo-Guyanese. And so many would begin to wonder when the narrative of this attitude and conduct is leveled against black professionals because of the racist nature of the PPP. I recall that it is not only you in your family that has been the recipient of this sort of gross disrespect. I've been around a long time and I've written on it years and years ago. Bara Jagdeo said that Nigel Hughes, who is your husband, said that Nigel Hughes will never be a senior counsel under his watch because Nigel Hughes had taken a position to stand up for the oppressed. He had taken a position to be a Guyanese who it had nothing to do with its qualifications, it had nothing to do with it. And so I'm trying to get here from you now that if this policy, this unwritten policy that the PPP has, that is engineered by Bara Jagdeo, and that many believe is leveled against black professionals, it's racist, it's abhorrent. Because here we are, Mrs. Hughes, member of parliament. Here we are looking at Rickford Burke, Mark Benshop, Shara Duncan, so many of us, including myself, when we speak, we don't say these things to women, but the Ethnic Relations Commission, they come out. And when you respond, I would like Apostle Nigel, Eliakim to also comment on this because I'm trying to draw the nexus. This is, to me, a situation where whether you are a prominent, middle class, well off, educated black woman, you are a lowlife in the book of Mr. Jagdeo because it is directed to a particular ethnic group that is being denied economic opportunities and so on. And so I wanted to make that point quickly because, the viewers can hear you say, well, this is a general conduct of Mr. Jagdeo. And the BBB could pick up and say, well, it's not racist. It's not against black black women and black professionals, because you admitted that he treated his wife in the same way. So I wish for you to clarify that,
So,
and Apostle coming in too.
so I think we also forget that. Gosh, it must be a good 20 years ago. We had a former president that said that African Guyanese were the lowest round. You remember? The lowest
On the
round in
social
the
ladder.
social ladder. We have been called in recent time hungry
Yes, yes.
belly, all kinds of different negative comments. And not once have I heard, even with this situation, the current president of Guyana, who stands as his own man, could very well say, no, 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 no. This is not who we are. Those comments do not represent my administration. We haven't heard that yet. We know going back to that we had a former head of the presidential secretariat that said no African Guyanese was qualified enough to be part of
Of the
the
diplomatic corps.
diplomatic corps. Exactly. In fact, that later came into a case that, strangely enough, Freddie Kissoon brought to the courts, that my husband also
Yes.
was very instrumental in proving that there was institutionalized racism in Guyana. When you have one group against the other, when you have, for example, and I was reminded of this just the other day, when you have a businessman, an African businessman like Mr. Terence Campbell,
Yes.
that puts on his Facebook page that he knows for sure and he has the proof that he is being charged a higher interest rate on loans from banks, from a commercial bank in Guyana. And you know what is most distressing about that? I expected the Bankers Association to come out and say, no, 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 absolutely not. Mr. Campbell, please come in. Please bring your evidence because we need
Right.
to fix this.
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
what our banking sector represents. Even the head of the Bank of Guyana has not called Mr. Campbell in up to now. And I know that for sure because I was thinking of this issue the other day when I came across his comments. And I sent him a message saying, by the way, were you ever approached? Did they invite you in? Did they investigate? No, nothing. So the message is it is totally acceptable for us to know for sure that in the area of business, although we talk about a one Guyana, because of the color of my skin, I must pay. I must pay more in an interest rate. I cannot be given the same opportunities. My colleague, Kemraj Ramjatan, has been asking for months now that the monies that were given to those farmers when we had the floods, the amount of Guyanese that still have, and those are in a lot of our communities, because I know of a list of more than 1,000 African Guyanese that still got a pink slip, that never
Hmm.
collected their monies. And nowhere was there advertised on the Sunday newspaper, by the way, if you got a pink slip, please come down to this location at this time and we will sit with you and we will remedy that situation. Because the grants, those vouchers, is public taxpayers' money and should have been allocated to everybody. I actually had a very sad situation, very sad situation. I had a call from a lady in the Parika Backdam area This is years ago when they were, during COVID, when they were giving out the cash grant. And she called me up in tears. At the end of the conversation, I was also in tears because she said, I'm an Indian woman, I'm a single parent. And the lady next to me is black and she's a single parent. And when I can't get home, she's look after my kids and vice versa. And she claims that she watched them come to her house and give her money. And the lady next door, they refused, although she came out to defend her neighbor. So nobody, if you think that all of us African Guyanese are under the illusion of discrimination, it's your responsibility to step forward and to show me the facts and convince me. Why have those names of persons that received the flood money never been published on a website so that we could see exactly? If everything is above board and if there's transparency and accountability in all these areas, why can't we see the proof on a website in the public domain? Why doesn't our pension system? We pay pension every single month to our pensioners. Why can't we pay cash grants to persons in that way? Why do you give it to a select group of people to walk in the community with a red t-shirt for them to decide who I give it to and who I ain't giving to? And you can't convince me that they have not been told how they're going to make a decision as to who
Right.
gets that measly money. This is total iPass. The facts are there. You know, it's very interesting because they complained, oh, bring the facts, bring the facts. Bring the facts. We have the facts now. We have the facts are documented now. And
I think we're getting a bit
missions
of a
groups
static there.
that
Yeah.
come. Yeah. And Nigel has done a presentation where he didn't make up the figures. He got all the figures in his economy and justice presentation from what's in the public domain, from the ministries, what they put out, from all the institutions. So we are in a real serious situation.
Based on what you've just said there, MP Cathy Hughes, I'm going to ask you a
Please
question.
call me Cathy.
I'll ask you a question. I just need a yes or no answer before I go to, if you may, before I go to Apostle Nigel Eliakim and then to JR. Uh, uh, do you think that Mr. Jagdeo is ideologically racist?
I think there's a court case that suggested he is. And I
I was
personally,
asking your opinion.
based on the fact, based on the facts that I am exposed to, and based on what I see, I think he is.
You think?
Would he have made this statement to the British High Commissioner, who I have the greatest respect for? Would he have made it to
The
a
American
female,
ambassador.
the American ambassador, a female Venezuelan ambassador? Would he have made this statement to 100 other people? No.
Thank you
How
so much.
many poor Indian people have been called hungry belly?
But I really thank you for that response there. I really appreciate that response, and I want to say that the fact that you are a middle class woman, the fact that you're well off, the fact that you are fortunate, you come from a great family, you have a great husband, you never had any sort of a hard life or anything, and he can still look at you and call you a low life. It's not
Yeah.
really you he's calling a low life because he
No,
knows who
look
you
at his
are. It
colors.
is. Thank you
It's his
so much.
hair.
Let us go to Apostle Nigel Eliakim, and we go to J.R. Crawford, and then we go into the next segment. Guys, take a few minutes. I'll just step away, but I can hear you. Go ahead, Nigel.
Okay, thank you. I think tonight, Cathy and I, Madam Moses, we are sharing some very important, though we're not in the same room. Because I was about to
Yeah.
say, in reference to what Norman was saying, that I would like Jagdeo, if I were a judge, I would say to him, kindly name one person of Indian descent that you ever said is a low life. It's very simple. We don't have to argue here. Mr.
Yeah.
Jagdeo, tell the court the name of one person that you've ever sat at a press conference. This person must be of Indian descent, and you called him a low life. And I'm sure he cannot do it because he's never done it.
Yeah.
And that alone speaks to the fact that, let's not forget, Mikhail Rodriguez, who's called the Guyanese critic, has done this ad nauseum. And he tried to say that low life is not directed to an ethnic group of people. Well, how many people has he ever called low life who do not happen to
Mm-hmm.
be African Canadians?
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a very particular consistency with this group, where they say that certain people are low lives, and on an overwhelming basis, this is normally targeted towards Guyanese of African descent. Jagdeo never called his wife, as far as her report stated, he never called her a low life either.
Mm-hmm.
And
True.
I looked at, and when I listened to that video clipping and saw the press conference, it was not just what he said about Mrs. Hughes, it's how he said it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not just what he said. There was a particular degree of disdain that I, because I lived in Berbice for 8 years, can tell anybody. I know when a racist speaks. I lived in the US for quite a while. I know when racists talk, there's a particular demeanor that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And his spoke clearly to all of us. And so this has nothing to do with whether you wealthy, you class.
Oh.
This is obvious to me that his response or his statement was more than being directed towards a female.
Mm-hmm.
Far more. Because I would dare say yet again, I was waiting, and I'm still waiting for him to call the Venezuelan vice president a lowlife. I mean, if anybody
Mm-hmm.
he could that with, let him try telling her she's a
Mm-hmm.
lowlife. And see what Maduro will do to
Mm-hmm.
you. Because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, even the woman who is encouraging Guyana to be so unstable in reference to person's psyche and the general social demeanor. Jagdeo can't call Venezuela's vice president a lowlife. And this woman, by the way, has insulted Guyanese, not just now. There was a delegation and she just went off. And now Jagdeo turns his attention to a female in Guyana who's of African descent to say that Cathy Hughes is a lowlife. And he was
Mm-hmm.
not met with a modicum, in my view, of justifiable force.
Wow.
Yep.
Apostle Nigel
Yep.
Eliakim
So.
there. JR, your take
Yep.
before we go to the next point.
No, I am in total agreement with what Nigel is saying, and I think that we are letting this thing go too easy. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot have this kind of behavior from elected officials. Elected officials are civil servants, and they must treat the fellow members there in parliament or anywhere with respect. Once you're elected, conduct yourself in a proper manner because we are there for the people's business. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said before, I'm very, very shocked not hearing from the international communities and more so the ABC and EU representative here. And part of this is our moral standing has decayed over the last 25 years or
Mm-hmm.
30
Mm-hmm.
years or so. And we are not seeing what I must say an effort. And as Cathy said early on, when you look at the abuse and the murders of our females at the hands of
Yep.
male people. It tells us that the male does not respect the female, and the female is looked at as an object. And this is the mentality that we have to try to run away as quick as possible from. The world has
Mm-hmm.
moved on where women has earned their rightful place in society. And if you go back in history, hundreds of years ago, women were making positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
And we as an oil producing nation, our leaders or protectors of our country should and must conduct themselves with proper respect. You know, if he wanted to make a statement against misuse, he could have said she was an out of touch individual and leave it at that. But when you start to use these terms, you're telling people or you're telling your supporters it's okay to disrespect people who we do not have the same agreements with on matters of national interest. So he is leading his party to continue to be abusive, and more so, not only as to an opposition supporter, but also as a female of African descent. And also with making this statement in the decade of African recognition, not
Yep.
only is misuse being disrespected, but every single black person around the world, we should have been able to show respect. That's the reason why they put this decade of African recognition to correct some of the mistakes. But here
Mm-hmm.
we have leaders, and albeit a former president, who is looking at the international bodies trying to right some of the wrongs and saying to hell with it, I will be disrespectful uh, whatever I feel like. And this is something that we need to have under control because someday somebody is going to trip. Somebody's going to call the wrong person names, and their
Mm-hmm.
spouse or relative will not take it easy, and we'll see some funny headlines in the newspaper.
Yep.
J.R.
Yep.
Crawford
You
there.
know, if
Go ahead,
if
go
I
ahead.
if I could
Go.
just say, just jump in. Sorry. Um, this is the thing that is important to note, that we don't the attacks are not based on your presentation, your facts, your policy, your recommendation. You know, in my case, for example, there's one individual who, from the time I come in to the parliament, will start with all the cat calls. Cat, 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 catty, catty.
What?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm trying to show you that we're not judged based on the content of what we are saying, what we're doing, our work. We are judged purely in a derogatory manner because of our sex. And then when it comes to race, as JR was speaking, JR, I thought of something. We know that since 2020, every black person in Guyana is a rigger. That is the
Right.
message that the PPP has sent
Yes.
clearly.
Yes.
And we have the most unfortunate situation where everybody, people that you least expect, that should have said something, has gone along with that kind of mantra. So that's how come I mentioned Cathy Hughes is a rigger, although she has nothing to do with she come the list, the operations, election day, or anything. Now we have more than one situation in our history. We know for sure, because it was documented, that Mr. Gokul Budu did some underhand things.
Yes.
We had an election where we were all sitting, waiting at the Pegasus Hotel for the announcement and the results. And we remember, thank God, Commissioner Vincent Alexander observed some underhand issues. We know from comments and reports that Jocelyn Dow has made publicly during previous elections. of the underhand issues that have taken place. I cannot recall one occasion when any of those individuals associated with the Guyanese of East Indian origin were ever called riggers.
Riggers.
So we in a bad way. And as JR has said, we just have to hope and keep praying that we don't have a situation where we have an explosion. God forbid. We don't want it. But when you put a people under this kind of pressure,
Yes.
you know, and this is a people, I know you talk about me being comfortable and middle class. I don't necessarily agree with all of the description, because I do feel very strongly that my parents, my foreparents, my ancestors came across here in chains. They were stolen from their communities and their families and brought here. Those canals that are in so many parts of Ghana, Canal number one, go across to the west side. Canal number one, Canal number two. So much of this country was dug by our hands. And for you to tell me after thankfully, because I stood on the shoulders of my ancestors, I'm able to get an education, run a business, contribute, and you tell me that I should not be allowed to do that in a land that is full of the sweat and blood and tears of our ancestors is unacceptable. We cannot accept that.
No.
And that's a very, very powerful statement. And I don't want to interject now, and in our closing remarks I will offer my view, and so on, because we've got a bit of time left, but we have to get to what has transpired coming from Bar Jagdeo. What frameworks are not in place? Why are the PvP getting away with it? But let me make this point quickly. But let me just, for the sake of the discourse, our foreparents came here as slaves, so they had no rights at all. They were stripped of everything. Their names, you name it. Apostle Eliakim would say that. But even in that condition, when the oppression became unbearable, they fought. There were uprisings and there were revolutions. And those uprisings and revolutions caused many of our middle class, our fortunate in our midst, to have a good education, to be privileged. But when you rise on the back of those who are oppressed, of those who are oppressed, and you were given those opportunity by their sacrifices, you have an inalienable obligation that when in your time the oppression returns,
Yeah.
and you are privileged, that you make the sacrifice more than anyone else to remove that oppression, even if it includes or involves the sacrifice of you losing what you're supposed to have. And I say this because it is a reality that many of our leaders have failed us. There are women who have been buried in shallow graves. There are women who are beaten as I speak in their homes right now, brutalized. There are women who have been killed, and the case jacket hasn't even reached the court because there are people in the PPP who drink with those people and socialize with them. Is somebody nephew, is somebody cousin, is somebody whatever. And that life goes down the drain. The anguish and the agony and the pain of the children and the family, they have to live with it. And no justice. No justice. And so those of us who are in the echelons of society that carries the same DNA of the oppressed must come out and they must lead that struggle. You understand? To bring that liberation. And because when you get the tools and the equipment and everything, when you are given everything, it is you who are most prepared and most equipped to lead the revolution. And I didn't want to say this because I want to give my guests the opportunity to talk. But I have to say that most of our leaders have failed us in time of crisis. And it is now a situation where, because of that, there is what you call, I can't find the words, but here it is that you have, not you, sorry. Here it is that our leaders have looked at the persecution, the brutality, the murder of the ordinary of their own ethnic group, but they are not of the same class, and they turned a blind eye. And today, the disrespect is reaching now up to those who believe by class they're equal to those who is of another ethnicity but hates them. And so the hate overpours in the sense, now we have damaged your people and you couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't liberate them. You couldn't stand up for them. And now today we're going to look at you and we're going to come at you to call you what we are doing to them, to call you, and I'm really, really sorry. But I am saying this here on this program tonight because this program is to bring about the change. And you are a remarkable woman. You're an intelligent woman. Your husband is a remarkable man. He's an intelligent man. I hope that we begin to see and to understand and to realize that now the expertise and everything that you've been given must be used to bring about this liberation. And that where you stand now, that when the struggle ensues, we will be there to back you and to carry that fight and to lift you up so that no one else can ever say to you what Mr. Jagdeo is leveling against you. And therefore the class and everything must be stripped and we must begin to see each other firstly in the oppression as equals, as one. And when we unite and we take that struggle forward, we will crush the enemy. The middle class says when they go low, we go high.
Yeah.
High say when they go low, I kick them in the face. You understand? Because our people, there is so much wrongs that are happening to black people in Guyana. And I wrote an article, and I'm going to finish now, but I wrote an article yesterday talking about the rich Jews that were playing violins while poor Jews were being burned in ovens. It smacks at class. Because class is something that you can forget about your color. You could forget that you're black.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't necessarily.
No, I'm not talking about you. I am not talking.
No, I know.
But I'm saying it could make one feel that way.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
making a job because the point I'm making here.
Kathy.
I am going to, because I've made a decision to refer to every black person, male or female, with a title because we're not low life.
Okay. Okay.
That's why I'm doing this. You understand? And I'm going
Okay.
to stick to it.
I appreciate it.
And I mean that. I really mean that. And so I'm saying
Mhm.
this, and I'm saying it very seriously. No matter what discourse we have, the problem is there and it's getting worse. It means that this
Yep.
discourse must be a catalyst to something else to bring about the change. You are an illustrious woman. You are our pride. I got a picture of you since about 2011. I was standing with yourself and Kemraj when you visited Linden.
Okay.
And I kept that photograph. I didn't pull it up or anything. But it's the
Mm.
pride. When people say Nigel Hughes, Cathy Hughes, and certain black names called, you say Burnham, you say Hamilton Green. Every name that we revere, the
Yeah.
PPP pulls them down.
Yeah. No, that's true.
And I mean
That's
it. It
how it
has to
is.
stop. And so I didn't want to do this now, but we've got some time. So let us take a quick break before we go to the next session. Did you have something to add quickly?
Yeah,
Yeah, go
if
ahead.
you don't mind,
Go
I
ahead.
wanted
Sorry.
to comment on what you said. First of all, what comes to mind is a mantra that is very important and very important to me, and that is, to whom much is given, much is expected. I too feel, and I'm speaking as, acknowledging that I am a leader in many respects, but I do feel too that our leaders um, have not delivered to the people. And this is where in Guyana, it's not only a problem in Guyana, but I choose and we choose tonight to look at the Guyana experience. And the reality is that the problem is a little more complex. And this is where we have to get back to the stage where people, where Guyanese people, and this, I suppose, relates to your religious beliefs, to the foundation of you, what you hold as important to you, your values. We have to get to the stage where more people are willing to stand up.
Yes.
Because I like to use the analogy of a chair. You know, we could fix a lot of the problems if the situation we have is can be considered in terms of a table. Let's use a table. And we got to move this table from X to Y. If we got four people holding the table, we can move it in 2 minutes. If we only got 1.5 persons, it can take 4 months.
Yes. Totally.
And I would like to say that the problem I see in Guyana is that too many people are not interested in speaking up. And this is where I mentioned the fear in the society. We just decide, you know what, we say it. Oh Lord, I ain't checking on the. I gotta make my money, I gotta work, I got a job. I ain't getting involved. I doing my own little thing. And so the system has allowed us to just turn inwards. And we don't think enough about Guyana. We don't think enough about all the things we've talked about tonight. And for me, my last attempt of bringing some sanity to this madness is recognizing that our institutions, and we spoke a lot about the parliament because I feel strongly about that,
Yes.
our
Yes.
institutions are not working. But it's not only the parliament. I mean, there are all kinds of other institutions in Guyana that don't function,
The country is
right?
broken. It's
The
broken.
country is broken. We could talk about GCOM. We got an
Yes.
election coming either next year or 2025. every single observer mission at the last election said we must get a new list, right? Yet we have a leader who is going to bypass, after praising everything these folks had to say in 2020 and rescuing us, bringing us democracy for the second time in our whole lives, because we only had democracy in 1992 and we only had it in 2020. And yet, we ain't got no talk about fixing this list that everybody say got a problem. In fact, the man said prior, in 2015 when he was in opposition, he said, oh God, this list is bad. We got to fix it. And now everything's okay with the list, including the Venezuelans that are probably registered. I don't mind if you're, according to our laws, you are a Guyanese returning descendant of Guyanese, whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to know that you are legitimately and rightfully on that list. And you have not convinced me, the system has not convinced me of that. When we look at the parliamentary commissions that do not exist still, and that is where I mentioned to you at the start that I wanted to tie in the establishment of the Human Rights Commission, because this is very important.
Because we will
I
go
want,
to that. We will
okay,
definitely go to
I'll
that in a
hold my
second.
thoughts
That's
on
why.
that.
But because we engage in this, I will give Apostle Nigel Eliakim
Sure.
2 minutes to respond to what we said, and JR 2 minutes to respond. Then we will take a brief break to watch a video, and then we'll go into this the commission, the Human Rights
Okay.
Commission issue. Then we'll have our closing remarks and wrap up.
Thank you. And what I've observed is that our society has taken a turn. It could be because of social media, where people would prefer to, and I'm speaking to Ghana society here, people
Yeah.
prefer to report to a few faces rather than stand as many faces. And what you find is there are very few individuals, I'm one of them, who people will reach out to share information on their behalf and to take a social position or stance on their behalf. And the PvP has got a very clear understanding of this here. So if you've got Nigel, Rickford, Norman, Mark Benchchop, Nigel Hughes, bears my name as well. I bear his, he's older than I am. They say, okay then, so we have 5 people who we can just attack and just smear them, say anything we want to say about them, because only 5 of them. As opposed to 5,000 people who decided we're going to stand together to oppose
Exactly.
this. No, you can't attack all 5 of us and 5,000 people on social media.
Exactly.
And the people have figured out that, okay, if they are social activists, as they label us, then it's easy to smear the social activists, to troll their social media pages, to say all
Yes.
kinds of things about them.
All kinds of, yeah.
Because they're not 5,000 people standing. And I continue to insist that the PPP shall not act. And I dare say that even the opposition, to some extent, the leader thereof, and many therein, would not act
Thank you.
in the right way to some
Thank
extent
you.
until they see
Yeah.
5,000 faces saying, you know what, we had enough of this. Or even 500
Yes.
people.
Yes. Yes.
We
Yeah.
want good governance. And that's all I stand for in Guyana. I believe that Guyana is not governed by the PPP. Guyana is governed by the PPP and the APTO AFC, along with Schuman and the joint party they had.
Yeah.
We also are governed by us. We are represented in the House of Assembly. We're not governed by the House of Assembly or by the PPP. I'm represented, or should be represented. We called the Cooperative Republic of Guyana for a reason. It wasn't given that name for why a republic? Why we call it democratic societies? The PPP said they're guardians of democracy and they restore democracy. So people govern in a democracy by representation. And I call on every Guyanese who's viewing this broadcast to return to what your country really is. And finally, I dare say that, and that's why I dress the way I do as well, this has significance to me. Our African or Hebrew foreparents, when they recognize that the plantation owners and massa brought those hoodlums to keep us in check and beat our fathers and kill them. They recognized one day, you know what? If we do not respond in a particular manner,
Manner.
this will never stop.
It will never stop. Thank you so much. And before you go on, quickly, before you go on, I want to make it very clear, MP Cathy Hughes, I'm saying these things is not leveled at you. It is to
No, I
make
know.
you, in your illustrious presence here, is to make you aware that whatever we do, every step we make, every step we take, every move we make, you know, for you to be here on this program is so great. You are humble enough to join us. But I have to do my work, and every step we take, every move we make, we must gel. And wherever there were missteps, we must say we are here because of those missteps. We cannot continue making the same missteps.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
so go ahead, Apostle. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm boiling with this,
No,
and
no, go
I
ahead. You
work
go
from
ahead.
8 o'clock to 9 o'clock tonight just to come and talk with you. So, listen, I saw Mrs. Hughes, for example, when Dharamlal was accused of raping this girl and doing the most disgusting thing. I saw Madam Cathy Hughes standing outside, and if I'm not mistaken, in the blazing sun
Yes.
and in rain to say that
Carrying
this
the
is not
struggle,
right.
it's not right.
No, man, don't
Yes.
play. This is a woman. And I asked the question, where are the men? Guyana is changing in a manner that I can't deal with as a man. I was raised, I'm 50 years old. I was raised by men who different from themselves. I can't have any, there's no way in my head. A girl could say, as in this case, she was raped, and women have to stand up for her. No, women should stand with me or behind me. Where are the men in our society to defend the rights of our females? In this case, with Jagdeo saying what he said about Madam Hughes again, where are the men? I'm not calling no women society, women group to come and defend my sister. No, we have, because on the plantations it was men who said that we have got to do something about this because our women are being raped, our daughters are being molested and sodomized and all kind of stuff. No, we have to fix this because we would lose all of our lives if we sit back and let this game play on. And I'm saying that the time is coming, Guyana, for us to step up to the plate and do what we must to
J.R.
change
Crawford.
the course of our.
J.R.
I
Crawford.
agree.
And then, go ahead, J.R.
Norman, I could understand Nigel's way of thinking because of the prolonged disrespect and oppressive behavior. I will lay the blame squarely at the feet of the few black men that pick up weapons to do the dirty deeds against their brothers and sisters. And that's what's holding this current administration in office.
True.
Wow.
If you
Wow.
look at the alleged dirty doers, if parade 50, 48 would be black men, 2 would be East Indian. And quite too long, the black men are selling themselves cheap for a farce, what they call a good life. They're destroying their own societies. They're creating oppressive behaviors that affects not only black Guyanese, but also people who do not agree with the current administration, who support other political parties as such. We have to start to get to the bottom of this, where these folks that are taking these tidbits to be destructive in our societies, create division and oppression, they need to be expired. At this juncture, we have been too long a republic and an independent nation to have such behaviors and division that is holding back our growth of our nation. And it's going to affect not only us that is affecting now, but our children and grandchildren will not have a proper society, will not have proper mentors, would not have proper examples of how to treat each other, how to treat people of different ethnicity, how to treat people of different age group or people of different political beliefs. We can disagree, we can be respectful. And again, the PPP has shown over the years, as long as they're in power, they interfere with everybody's behavior. The police force per
Yeah.
se, nobody acts independently. They have to take directives. They have to be oppressive to keep this power, to keep this knee on the necks of people who are supposed to be, in some eyes, inferior when it's the other way around. And, if you want to know how much black people have suffered in this country, I'm not saying East people didn't suffer, but the blacks came first on a maiden land. If you were to go into the cane fields
Hmm.
and take a stand there in silence and look at the cane beds, look at the height, the
My
depth of the
Lord.
cane, and envision the foreparents being labeled as subhuman with the whips cracking behind them and the lack of proper tools to build these beds for the cane field so the masters could earn monies and be boastful in their circle. Then you would understand the tears and the hurt for hundreds of years that our foreparents had to go through. Now we have moved along. The indenture servants came, they got some of it, but not as what we got. And after 300-400 years, you mean to tell me that you're still going to disrespect the offsprings that you, now in leadership, are enjoying the benefits? It has to stop.
It has to
And
stop.
I I put this out there. I'm challenging all the black so-called gunmen and roughneck and bad boys. Take a look in the mirror and see if you're doing yourself any justice by being a minion for a few little weaklings. You're destroying the whole country. You're allowing people without integrity to remain in office, to destroy our society, to divide us, and unnecessarily oppress us. Is that what you're here to do? Is that what you're calling us for? And this is why we must call these people out. We must live with fear, but not in fear,
Right.
or
We
else
must
we'll
live with fear,
never
but
have a progressive nation.
thank you, J.R. Crawford. We have to go to this brief clip so I can give you guys an opportunity to have a little water. So it's going to be for about 2 minutes. And then we come back and we deal with the Human Rights Commission. Then we have our closing remarks. The show went on a bit here, but it's important sometimes. We have a distinguished guest, uh, Honorable, Honorable Cathy Hughes, Member of Parliament and Chairman of the Alliance for Change, also a communications guru. A black woman, and I am not afraid to say that, a black woman that is distinguished. That Mr. Barra Jagdeo could not even carry a bucket of water for her. You understand? And this is reality. Here is a man that couldn't even keep a wife for a year. A woman with her husband for 30 something years, scandal free, in the halls of the National Assembly, in a political party that is headed by an Indian, and there's no racism or anything. This man hates success. He hates anything that he cannot be. And we stand up today for our sister. And I want to tell people that I don't really care sometimes. I'm black, black, black. MP Cathy Hughes is my sister.
Me too. Me too.
Let me call her out. But you, without any morality, should not venture to do that. You in the PPP, you Jagdeo, if you venture to do that, we will rise up against you. Hence this program. We will take a short break. I did say that it's not the traditional program, and so forgive me. We take a short break. If you want to have a quick thing, do whatever quickly, and then we'll be back.
About the low life.
Uh-huh.
I think they were deeply involved in the preparation of it.
Yes. And Professor, let's start there. We didn't intend to start there, but it's now there. There is what is, well, so what? Jagdeo called somebody
But it's important, David.
Go
I
ahead.
think
Yes.
I think the real threat that represents is that it's forcing us to normalize a pattern of behavior, which I think is so fundamentally anti-diversity, anti-supportive of women in the society, disrespectful of children in the younger generation, even disrespectful of elders, that we should not allow it to continue. I think that is more than just Jagdeo. He wants to normalize a pattern of politics that I think we should not accept. And when we talk against it, we should talk about it in that name. It's not only that he's vulgar, it is not only that he's breaking the law by maligning people, but he's also trying to normalize a pattern of behavior which I don't think belongs in a society like Ghana. We treat people differently. And I think he should be rebuked on those grounds. I feel very strongly that we should not allow it to continue. And that is a threat that we face. You see, the arrogance of oil and power and petrostate allows these guys to believe they can control everything. They want to control the dialogue and the way in which we present it to the public. We should not let them get away with it. So I see the fight against that type of behavior as being almost a fundamental fight as well. Because the fight for style of politics that should not allow to continue. Because it will in the end not help people who are being fruitful and are being responsible to the people who are being deprived in this society.
Professor Clive Thomas starting off here tonight with that very strong statement on Jagdeo's name calling, in this instance, Cathy
Maligning women.
Maligning women, and putting it in its broader perspective and why we should stop it now. We should not allow it to continue.
To be normalized.
Yeah. We should not allow it to continue. We should not allow it to be normalized. Here we are going to briefly deal with something that maybe all these things are happening because we are not able to put structures and systems and everything in place for the society to function freely and for it to function in the correct way. And if we don't have those measures and everything in place, if we don't have certain things in place, we can talk till the cows come home. There will be no justice. There will be no, and so I want to go to MP Cathy Hughes. We know that there's a cry for a human rights commission, and this government it doesn't seem as if it's listening, and it's important to have a human rights commission. The smallest child would know that. Talk us through this, and let us take the conversation there and share it, and then we have our closing remarks.
Absolutely, and thank you. I think it's good to understand and start off with the perspective that we know that strong, independent institutions are what make countries and nations successful. And the Human Rights Commission is one of the commissions that came out of our constitution reform process in the early 2000s, which was recommended go back to Article 154A in our Constitution and to explain to our viewers that it entitles every citizen to the human rights enshrined in the international treaties, and such rights shall be respected and upheld by the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and all organs and agencies of the government. I'm specifically reading it for clarity so
Go
people
ahead.
can understand what I'm saying. And so in this particular situation, what we're really saying is that we got to put in place the protections that the society needs to make sure that these protections allow individuals to be protected, to be looked after, to have a course, to have a way to have any concerns, any discrimination addressed in a fair manner. And so it's a fight in Guyana right now because I think what has happened with 23 years of the PPP is that those institutions have been gradually, their independence has been diminished. And to tell you the truth, in 5 years, I feel that we did not have enough time, especially since, because of the no confidence motion, we really lost 2 years because that happened in 2018. So, in terms of the APNU AFC being able to focus and get all this redress in place, time did not allow for that. Now, why is it? And these protections can only be enforced if we have a human rights commission, which is in our constitution, as I mentioned. And I want to just explain that there is something called the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women. And it's also called the Convention Belém do Pará. Now, Guyana is a signatory to that convention, but we can only start to exercise some of those rights if we have this Human Rights Commission, which, as I mentioned, is in the Constitution. And as I just stated, it has special protection in terms of violence against women. So, I mean, this incident, we have far more egregious incidences of violence against women taking place in Guyana. And as we said at the start of the program, the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, the last 20 years, we have a long list. And the time has come that if this commission can help to protect women, we have to fight to put it in place because, as
Yes.
you said, Norman, this government has not been interested in putting it in place. Now, I want people to understand what is violence against women, just briefly. So, violence, according to Article 1 of that provision and that document, the Convention on Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, it defines it this way: violence against women shall be understood as any act or conduct based on gender which causes death or physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, whether in the public or in the private sphere. Violence against women shall be understood to include physical, sexual, psychological, and that is perpetuated or condoned by the state or its agents, regardless of where it occurs. So when you have someone that is holding an official position that does any act that can be described as violence against a woman, we know that this convention has very strict opportunities for redress. And that's why I'm saying that, under the convention, we talk about the rights that women have. Women have the right to, a woman has the right to have her life respected, the right to have her physical, mental, and moral integrity respected. These are all in the articles of this same convention. So this is all laid out. The protections are there, but because we don't have our local commission, we don't have the mechanism. We can write to some of these bodies, but we don't have the mechanism for them to actually investigate. We don't have the mechanism, for example, that I would like to say to them, look at this situation and what this official of the government stated. What rights can be afforded to me to protect me under this? What rights of redress do I have? So this is just one commission. I know that the program has gone on for a while, but I just
No,
want to
take your
briefly
time. No,
say,
take your time. Take your
okay,
time.
good, good,
Take your
thank
time.
you.
You're allowed.
So
Take your
some of
time.
the things, so some of the things that I would want to do is really request an opinion from the same Inter-American Commission on Human Rights on whether the statements and pronouncements from the Vice President of the Cooperative Republic, referring to a form of myself as low life, whether that constitutes psychological harm and suffering. I think it does. Whether the whole term of low life is a breach of that convention that we're talking about, and what kind of recommendations can be taken when it comes to infringement of these rights. Now, the PPP has very, very successfully ensured, especially in this current parliament, which is very different in operation from the previous parliaments that I've been part of. They've been systematic in ensuring, as I mentioned, that the parliament does not work. So we have commissions within the parliament, and one, of course, and committees. One of the commissions that still has not been established is the Petroleum Commission. Imagine we're now an oil and gas economy, and there
Yes.
is a commission that's supposed to be independent that can help to review a lot of the issues taking place as we develop this oil and gas industry. So I firmly believe that the recent scenario we had, where we've literally said to an officer who said to Exxon indirectly, man, don't bother to pay 214 million. You could pay a little 3 million and we got happy with that as a country. A petroleum commission would have been able to investigate that. The issues that we see so aptly raised in Kaicho News almost every day. Those kinds of issues that would guarantee that the industry served the people of Guyana would be better served if we had that petroleum commission. So we need to advocate more than that. Everybody knows that the reason why we haven't been able to do it successfully is because the government has that one seat and they use it to the maximum. So when it comes to voting, they use that one seat to be able to pass the legislation. We have to now have the people stand up and say, this is what we demand, that you are there to serve us. And we demand, we have to create a momentum that these commissions be established. Imagine the National Resource Committee, the Natural Resources Committee. I sit on that committee. And that is the committee that looks at how our natural resources are being managed. And oil and gas is one of the newest natural resources that we're looking at. Imagine that committee after former member Parliament Raffle Trotman resigned from the Parliament. That committee was never brought back into being for close to 2 years. And a committee as important as that. And now, although we fought to have it come into place, and although we have a chairman, we hold the chairmanship in Don Hastings Williams, who's the chairman of the committee, our work is being frustrated. Because believe it or not, we know that there's a problem in Chinese landing. Since 6 months ago, we agreed that we would pay a visit to Chinese landing. It was agreed that that visit would take place on Tuesday of last week. And up to Monday, I was writing to the parliamentary committee saying, how come we have not finalized the arrangements? And the reason was that we received was the speaker up to 24 hours had still not approved the visit. So what is the point of having a parliamentary commission? And I want to explain to the public that parliamentary commissions, parliamentary committees, when we ask questions on behalf of the Guyanese people we represent, when we pose a question to the parliament and a minister in charge has to answer those questions, that is because the premier institution in this country is the parliament.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
Norman, if you say, Cathy, I want to know how many Venezuelans are in Guyana in Region 1 and how many are in Region 2 and 3 and 4, I have a responsibility to represent you and ask that question. Well, I
Yes.
want you to know that MP Tabitha asked that question in July, and this is November, and it is now going on the paper, on the order paper to be answered. So for 6 months, long before we knew that we had this referendum and we were in this really difficult situation, we were asking questions. And instead of it being received, oh my, this is the parliament. I'm the minister. I need to answer immediately out of respect for the institution, the constitution, and my colleagues in parliament. Now we ain't got to speak 6 months. And I've asked questions and I have been told we're not answering this question because if you go back to Starbuck News of such a date and such a time, the Prime Minister happened to mention it when he was at some function, and Starbuck News or Kaichor News happened to report it. Failing to recognize that there is a power with it being answered in the Parliament, it goes into the Hansard. It means something. So that's just to give you an idea of the struggle and also the approaches I am going to continue to take, especially with regard to the Human Rights Commission, which I
Yes.
think would better protect the women of Guyana in this current situation. And there are women in far worse situations. So I will be articulating this, and I hope, as Apostle mentioned, that we can get not 5 or 500, but 5,000 men, women, and Guyanese that stand up and demand that these institutions that guarantee our participation in governance, transparency, and accountability are put in place so we create a better Guyana.
Apostle Nigel
Thank you for.
London, JR, and then we have the
I
closing remarks, and that's it. That's it for the evening. Go ahead, Apostle.
thank you. More than likely, my response to what you're speaking here may include my closing remarks.
Okay.
We have a society in which the administration, which is what the PPP is this time, do not recognize the importance of law and order. They function
Mhm,
most effectively in chaos and
mhm,
disorder, as well as unlawful behaviors. There are so many very critical commissions, including the Judicial Commission
Yep.
that Irfan has
Yeah.
no respect for in reference to its existence. This man is paid to be president. Note my language, please. I don't see him as anything called president. He's paid to be a president. And in him being paid to function in this capacity, he cannot even appoint a body as important as the Judicial Commission, which reaches into the functioning of the Ethnic Relations Commission.
Yeah.
So we have an Ethnic Relations Commission because it has to be that not to have this body here. But if one is to file an appeal for some ruling made by the Ethnic Relations Commission, there is no judicial commission which would be responsible for appointing the arbitrators in the situation. So look at what we're dealing with. Then the Human Rights Commission would be saddled with such a great constitutional mandate that if they were to function efficiently, the PPP civic leaders would be the first to be dragged before them.
Yeah.
So,
So
in brief,
there's no need for them to want to establish those.
no, and you've expressed my thought. With the PPP administration, there is no need to have certain commissions because the presence of these commissions will demand that either one like me or you or some other person with deemed a social activist will say, but hold on, who is the commission calling you? To Jagdeo or Ali. So why have the commission? So instead of just openly disrespecting the commission, they rather not establish it.
Yes.
And that's just a fact.
Yes.
That's just the cold hard truth. And what we have to do as Guyanese is understand that the presence of commissions in the presence of a body called the administration that doesn't respect that commission is an absolute waste of time. The PP has no respect for anything called law and order. None. And for as long as they don't do that, commissions will be useless in Guyana. Unless we, the people, who again, we govern this country through asking representatives to represent the House Assembly, unless we step up and say to them, this is what we demand, and you all had better do it, it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
We the Guyanese people, of all ethnic groups, Guyanese people, must wrestle out of the hands of these people control of our state. In my closing thoughts, I would say, and if you ask me to say it again, I don't mind saying it. Venezuela is about to vote on the 3rd of December. I don't know exactly. The world knows what they'll vote and say. It's just a sham referendum.
Yeah.
The man who's paid to be president is headed to Dubai. And on the day when Venezuela, historically speaking, will make a decision about Essequibo and what they will do, Irfan Ali will be in Dubai. And he will come back here on the 12th of December. Is that not the grossest level of disrespect? Now, this is beyond a commission here. Which is why I'm saying we don't need a commission with this PP group. We need a revolution.
Oh, that is said so beautifully. And we need a strong opposition. Go ahead, Apostle.
If Maduro decides on the 4th of December, you know what? The results of the referendum is out. They're out. Tomorrow we are going to make a move to annex Essequibo. Our command in Dubai, and do a Facebook post or video to say, I'm here in my hotel room in Dubai, and Guyanese, just be strong.
Wow.
This is and I thank you. I really because I said this to you, and I have to reinforce the point. You know, if I am placed in a position to be the one that is there to confront you, is that I am the one. You and I are there, and we have to deal with something. My job is to ensure that it is dealt with correctly. You're given the responsibility to deal with it, but my job is to make sure that you deal with it correctly. You see, listen to the point.
Correct.
You are there to deal with it. But my job is to ensure that you are there to deal with it correctly. If you could be allowed to do all that you want to do incorrectly, there's a problem with me.
And permit me to permit me, please, Norman.
Go ahead, sir.
Please,
Go ahead. No,
please.
we got a few minutes. Go ahead.
I am of the view, and I've called for this on my program last week, that especially Irfan Ali, and all of the cabinet members must surrender their travel documents and be prohibited from leaving Guyana. Who can ensure that happens, or who can try to make it happen? The opposition.
Thank you so much.
Man, listen, you can't. They don't have a private jet. They don't have any private jet here in Guyana. They should go to the airport and say, not one of y'all leaving this country here. There's a referendum in Venezuela about to be had, and we are going to ensure that you, since you love Guyana so much, will stay right here. Because Ali flew in our helicopter, landed on Mount Rama, wherever he was, go and eat chicken and roti, and then gone to Dubai. What kind of
They
foolishness
are
is that?
disrespectful, and let me say this to you before I bring JR in, because we're going to have our closing remarks. Really, 2 minutes of closing remarks, and we'll call it tonight. It's 2 hours, 6 minutes into the program. We will allow another 15 minutes, and that's it. But let me say this quickly. You know, I want to drive home this, and I appreciate the fact that MP Cathy Hughes was humble enough to come on this program, and it touches my soul. You know, it touches my soul, because here we are coming to a point now where, you know what, we have to gravitate to, even if they say Norman is a rabble rouser, you know, JR is this or that, we are coming together. Because when we gel together, you understand, the process begins.
Right.
And I want to say it quickly. When they were going against Apostle Nigel London, I swear, when the pressure was coming down on him, I said, you can't tell me I can't identify with my brother. Am I making it up?
No.
And when they didn't want to give him a platform, I said he's going to come on my platform. And that was against a backdrop where we had some differences before, politically,
Right.
not political, but not personal. You get me? But I said, you can't. And I said that my brother, and when I brought him on my platform, everybody else wanted to have him. You know, and that's how we have to do it. And I said that to say this to you, that unity is strength. It is strength. And so we are going to go to our closing remarks now. J.R. Crawford, MP Cathy Hughes, Apostle Nigel London, and then we wrap up.
Norman, when you have a country that does not want to appoint constitutionally mandated commissions, which do or which are supposed to act independently, it tells you that you're heading down the road of disaster. That's the reason why the framers of the Constitution put it there that certain areas must have a commission to keep it in line and make sure the rule of law is followed. So when we're not seeing like the Human Resource Commission here, that tells you we are setting ourselves up so we don't have any protection from this sort of behavior that created this particular program there with name calling and creating psychological stress. On the other hand, Nigel mentioned something about Ali going to Dubai and with the impending referendum in Venezuela. That, in a sense, is the Prisoners Act. We just saw the nation being totally disrespected when Ali went to Mount Roraima a few days ago.
Yeah.
And they sent up a flag there that is totally disrespectful to our constitution and to our people. That flag is totally wrong and should never be hung on any pole in this country. And this is showing us that the people who are in charge of the running of the affairs of this country are totally disrespectful. They are not honorable. They are out there for their own reasons. We as a nation need to come together and stop this runaway train.
Yes.
In and because when I saw the flag and I looked at it, I know as a kid that is not the way the flag the Guyanese people. We have dwindled your natural resources and we have dwindled your forestry and we have increased your uncomfortableness where the red signifies passion, but this new flag signifies anger. There's so much red in the flag, and people are not reading into this. That's the, hanging flags like that. That constitutes to being treasonous. You
Yes.
cannot disrespect the Constitution like that because the people have to go to a referendum to change the flag. Coming back to the disrespect to the people, we, we are not seeing the opposition coming out with a very forceful pushback, demanding our members of parliament, our people in general, to be respected by those who are in charge right now. The Speaker of the House, as Cathy mentioned early on, has no control because he's a puppet. And the disrespect that goes on in Parliament, you can think that when you're looking at a session in Parliament as you're in a rum shop with a bunch of drunks. And it's disheartening to hear Cathy says when you're entering the parliamentary room, you're hearing people making
Cat
small
calls.
boy. Those
Cat
cat
calls. Yeah.
calls are people with low IQ and low self-esteem because they're not brave enough to strike a proper conversation if they want to have your attention. But this is what the people have elected to run their affairs. People who are, I will put it straight up, lunatics, disrespectful citizens of this country that should not be in the House of Parliament. And that's why we need constitutional reform to have a better way of electing people to be at the helm of our decision making. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Nigel Hughes has done a lot of legwork where we could have reformed our constitution a long time ago if we had respect for the people of this country. But we're using the poor to, to steal and fill our pockets to the selective few. And by to do so, we must be oppressive, we must be discriminative, and we must be evil-minded. This has to stop. Our motto is one nation, one destiny. It means that we are not supposed to walk away and leave others behind suffering. That is why that's our motto. That if you look at our coat of arms, it tells you things. We are supposed to be a, a people that cares and concern about our brothers and sisters regardless of ethnicity. But we are not seeing that, and we are seeing disrespect to our constitution and our people by having this one Guyana being pushed around. Everyone who's pushing one Guyana is treasonous.
Thank you very
It's
much,
not in
J.R.
our
Crawford.
constitution.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take 1 minute to give my closing remarks. We will allow our special guests to be last to give our closing remarks. We hold her that respect. So it's going to be me, Apostle, and then we will allow MP Cathy Hughes to give her closing remarks, and that's it for the evening. I want to say this. I want to say that one of the fundamental things I learned when I started to live the developed world, the so-called developed world. I came from abject poverty. I came from Linden, where the pressure is so strong. And I came from a place called Kansas City, where if you think Linden is impoverished, you go in Kansas City back then. So if you want to go into a yard toilet in the evening, you have to light the newspapers and look for snakes and so on. You know, and so I came from abject poverty. Abject, when I tell you, I know what struggle is, and no one knew, because when I presented myself out there, you couldn't know. I want to say this. I want to say that I learned a fundamental thing in the developed world, and it is this: the question, why does someone hurt you? Why does someone trample on your right? Why does someone persecute you? And you think, and you intellectualize and all of that, and you give reasons. There is only one answer to it. It is because they can. Someone could only do something to you because they can, because they are allowed to. And it's a fundamental position I want us to understand. Regardless of all that we give anything else, like Jagdeo is doing this and Jagdeo is doing, and this is not in place. Someone can only do something to you because they can. And if you don't remove that platter to allow them any excuses, any reasoning or whatever, is, they can. Why do I cheat? Because you can. Fundamentally, why do I walk across the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge and slap a man? Because I can. Because if that opportunity is not given to me, I can't. Understand that. And therefore I say this. In Guyana, the PPP is doing whatever they're doing to us because they can. And we can sit in parliament, and we could sit on the street sides, and we can come and Voice of the Diaspora, or Politics 101, or Mark Benshop show, or Sherrod Duncan's show. We can do all we are doing, intellectualizing, talking to people. The PPP will continue because they can. And 30 years down the line, when we become absolute and insignificant and dead, our generations after us, who are nursing from a bottle that didn't know what we face, will face worse. You know why? Because the PPP can. And it is the onus on us to begin now to ensure that they can't by any means necessary. And that is my closing remarks. I want to say this. I am honored genuinely by the presence of my black, beautiful sister, whose husband is now a friend of mine. And the fear that is going through the powers that be to see this unity coming together. The fear, the tremor. When this program is advertised, 1 hour after Barry Jagdeo run to a certain platform to say he's at some place talking about Venezuela will never invade us, or he's going to ensure. What can he ensure? Tell me what. Today, you don't understand that my sister, your sister, Apostle JR's sister, an illustrious woman, has come on this platform. And they are afraid. And we will stand up and we will walk the walk to ensure that she gets justice. This is the reason why she's here. Because we recognize that she is something of value. And something without value wants to take away that value from her. And we have to stand up wherever we are in this world. She is my sister. She's not heavy. And I'm saying today that regardless of our status or class or position or whatever, we have to come together for the common struggle, for the common purpose. And I pass this over to Apostle Nigel Eliakim, and the final word goes to our special guest, and we wrap up.
Let me say thank you again to you, Norman, to Mrs. Hughes, Mr. Crawford, and to your viewers for having indulged and participating whatever you did. I'm certainly grateful for the opportunity to be here. And I would like to say, most importantly to Mrs. Hughes, that I do not only stand with you, I stand for you in this situation. There's no woman I would ever stand back and watch be disrespected in this way and not address it as they would and continue to do. I would dare to say that we are in a very important phase of development in Guyana. And in this phase of development, it requires us reflecting on what has got us where we are as a people.
Yes, sir.
And understanding the value of a revolution, which is a sudden turn, and there needs to be one to right this ship and to bring us on course of good governance. I close by saying further that I admire those who, though I may be very critical of the manner in which they function, we can sit on programs of this nature that speak to national interest. We can be cordial, we can disagree if we have to disagree, but we can understand the value of good governance. I would therefore advertise, maybe much to your chagrin, Norman, that any member of the Pacific, I said it for years.
Yes, sir.
You and I are free to have a discussion. I don't stop talking to people. I could talk to Ali, Jagdeo, Nandalal, any one of y'all. We can have a conversation that leads towards good governance. I speak with anyone. I stand with anyone who intends to govern this country in a manner that's wholesome for my generation. And I think that's a view that we should all share if we are responsible people. So yet again, I say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Or a border. And from someone, a low life like Cathy Hughes, Eve more or a border. And from someone, a low life like Cathy Hughes, Eve more or a border. And from
Cathy Hughes, MP, distinguished Guyanese, chairman of the Alliance for Change, a woman of caliber and social standing. My sister, and I stand with you. Your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Norman, Mr. Brown. I have to say that I have been energized by this discussion. I have been renewed by the support from both yourself, Apostle Eliakim, and of course, Mr. J.R. Crawford. It's been a difficult road, but I think each of us, all of us, are walking that road. And when I consider that the road traveled by our ancestors was so much more difficult, and yet they achieved under those trying circumstances, they were able to triumph. I know that, as you have stated, if we work together, if we band together, success will be ours. I do believe that with hard work and dedication, that we will be able to build the Guyana that all of us hopes that we can realize and see in our lifetime. I want to thank all. I've gotten so many words of encouragement and support from my colleagues in APNU, the AFC, from women. Today, this afternoon, we had a presentation, a meeting at the Stabrook Market. And again, what keeps me going is the ordinary Guyanese, in the market today. I was reminded of the amount of people that are wishing us well and strength and commitment to continue in the dire of circumstances. So thank you, Guyana. Thank you to you three gentlemen for making me feel so warm and so good. And I've enjoyed this conversation. I can't believe we've been going for over 2 hours. It has been
Let
really
me tell
good.
you, let me tell you how long it has been.
And
2 hours, 26 minutes, and 18 seconds
wow.
counting.
Well, I hope you're going to invite me again and you're not going to think, oh God, oh my, this lady talks so much.
Mo- Most definitely, you will be invited. Most
I'm
definitely, because we got
I'm
work to do.
looking forward to it.
We have
Thank
work to do.
you.
And don't be surprised if the host of the program is Nigel Hughes when you're invited on the program. Thank you very much
Thank you again.
to my
Thank you.
co-host and friend J.R. Crawford. Thank you very much to Apostle Nigel, Eliakim, social activist and leader. Thank you to our special guest, Mrs. Catherine Hughes,
Thank you.
chairperson of the AFC, MP, and of course, a communications guru. To my viewers, love you. I will never leave you out. It is you that have me here and keep me going. It is your love and it's your support. Let us continue to work in this struggle. Tonight was a special program, and tomorrow will be a special program. Thank you, and do have a good night. We leave you with this song
Thank you.
because we hold the solidarity in our struggle against foreign invaders.
We are a peaceful people, struggling, we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we, not the one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now, we're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river, that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupanuni and the Essequibo, daytime or night. Though we be criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water.
About the low life.
Uh-huh.
I think they were deeply involved in the preparation of it.
Yes, yes. And Professor, let's start there. We didn't intend to start there, but it's now there. There is what is, you know, well, so what? Jagdeo called somebody.
But it's important, you know, David.
Go ahead.
I think the real threat that represents is that it's forcing us to normalize a pattern of behavior, which I think is so fundamentally anti-diversity, anti-supportive of women in the society, disrespectful of children in the younger generation, even disrespectful of elders, that we should not allow it to continue. I think that is more than just Jagdeo. He wants to normalize a pattern of politics that I think we should not accept. And when we talk against it, we should talk about it in that name. It's not only that he's vulgar, it is not only that he's breaking the law by maligning people, but he's also trying to normalize a pattern of behavior which I don't think belongs in a society like Ghana. We treat people differently. And I think he should be rebuked on those grounds. I feel very strongly that we should not allow it to continue. And that is a threat that we face. You see, the arrogance of oil and power and petrostate allows these guys to believe they can control everything. They want to control the dialogue and the way in which we present it to the public. We should not let them get away with it. So I see the fight against that type of behavior as being almost a fundamental fight as well. Because the fight for style of politics that should not allow to continue. Because it will in the end not help people who are being fruitful and are being responsible to the people who are being deprived in this society.
Professor Clive Thomas starting off here tonight with that very strong statement on Jagdeo's name calling, in this instance, Cathy
Maligning women.
Maligning women, and putting it in its broader perspective and why we should stop it now.